just the whole thought of we meditation themes came to mind as something that might be fun to do, useful to do, and spent yesterday just talking about the basics of contemplation of the body. And then I thought, well, shorter session today, an hour less in the morning, hour less in the afternoon, maybe just to concentrate some reflections and contemplation. Most of you are familiar with that teaching. But just to review some of the teachings around that, the five hindrances often being in reference to our meditation practice, start to settle down, the mind becomes quiet. We're not involved in so much of the capture our attention most of the time. Then as the mind starts to settle down in meditation particularly, the underlying tendencies that we're all carrying with us start to rise up to the surface in the form of these what the Buddha calls the five hindrances, five obstructions, mental states that come to distract us in our meditation practice. But also just to keep in mind that it's not just regarding meditation practice where we experience the five hindrances. It's most of our waking daily life, that one or more of them come into play and just kind of influence our perceptions, influence our engagement with the world, and we end up creating all sorts of suffering for ourselves and others by believing in the five hindrances, responding to them, and just not even knowing that they're what's going on inside of our experience, that we're living through them. So to bring conscious recognition to these, and then particularly in meditation, that's a really good chance to see how they operate, see where they come from, see how they can be ameliorated, and then to explore what it might be like to actually not be experiencing the hindrances and the quality of mind that can result as we attend to these and work to let them go. So I thought spend some time today, just particularly this morning, starting out with just a few reflections on some of the similes, which I'm sure not all of you, but maybe many of you have heard. But I was talking with Steve and Jessica, who I'm staying with earlier today, and Steve was saying, well, maybe you've heard them before, but you can't hear them too many times. So, so it may be a little bit repetitive, but just to use the opportunity to start to bring some reflection into them, not just hearing them on an intellectual level, but as we go along and through them, kind of seeing if it resonates with some experiences that you have had or you are having as the day progresses. Because the similes are quite wonderful. And then maybe spend a little bit of time just doing some meditation, have a brief period of some questions and answers depending on the time before the lunch break and in the afternoon. Doing some more reflection from some of the other teachings around the hindrances, and maybe exploring some of the qualities of mind that can start to arise when we free ourselves from the hindrances. So like, oh, what might it be like not to be under the sway of these, just sort of as a guided kind of reflection. So yeah, we'll just sort of see how it goes. Aiming to have our meal break from 11:30 to 1, and then come back together at 1 and go through until 3, and then have an opportunity, like we did yesterday, to have some more casual time afterwards. So yeah, let's just delve in there a little bit now. So the five hindrances, just to recap. The first one the Pali, kama chanda, sensual desire. The second one, vyapada, ill will, aversion, aversive states of mind. And the third hindrance that we, which is often translated as sloth and torpor, which is a great, but kind of a little bit more old-fashioned kind of a translation of that. What I think is a good translation of dullness and drowsiness. The fourth being, it's a great Pali word, very very descriptive of what the hindrance is udacha kukucha, which is like restlessness and worry. It sounds like exactly what it is. Udacha kukucha. And then the fifth hindrance of vichikicha, which is skeptical doubt. So just a summary, remembering of what these hindrances are described at. And, you can see that they sort of roughly correspond with the three root causes of suffering: greed, hatred, and delusion. That sensual desire is more of a greed state, the wanting mind, the wanting heart, the craving, sensual craving particularly. And the second hindrance of ill will is more of an aversive state, corresponding to dosa, the three roots being lobha, dosa, moha, dosa state, and then the third, fourth, and fifth states are hindrances of dullness, drowsiness, agitation, restlessness, and doubt, being what we call moha states, or states of confusion, delusional states of mind as they manifest into our experience. So, roughly afflictive mind states can generally, not always, but generally be categorized into one of these what we would call underlying tendencies, the lobha, dosa, moha, that causes so much confusion and suffering. So to just start to be aware of the presence of them, and using periods of time in our meditation to check and see, okay, which of these hindrances might be present, and how do I know it? How can I reflect on it? How to deal with it? Maybe start to let it go in some ways, so that we can experience a little bit more stability and tranquility in the mind, the heart. The similes that one of the sets of similes that the Buddha offers, it's very graphic, very clear, is the water similes. So that if you kind of conceive of the heart, mind, citta as being a impressionable, still, clear, similar to a clear, still pool of water, as a simile, a body of water of some sort, that in its resting state is quite clear and reflective. It's a reflective quality, the citta, the heart. But that when these underlying tendencies start to ripple up, they affect that still, clear pool of water, that clear mind, stable, clear mind in some way, and cause disturbance. And the first hindrance, kamachanda, sensual desire, is likened to dropping dye into the water, so that you drop some red dye or some purple dye or some yellow dye into the water, and the whole of the water takes on that color. The clearness becomes red or becomes the same color as the hindrance, and that's likened to sensual desire. So that 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 craving for um, stimulation in the realm of sight, sounds, tastes, smells, tactile sensations, the five physical sense spaces, that stimulation in that area, seeking pleasure from that sense space. We're in a sense moving into, a slightly altered state of perception that's not so clear. It's like the simile, rose-colored glasses. We see the world through rose-colored glasses when our minds are obsessed with some sort of sensual desire, and that craving kind of takes over. And in a sense, we become controlled by it. Sensual desire takes over our attention, and it steers our attention in ways that will provide some sort of gratification. And the Buddha was very clear. He never denied the fact that there was a form of gratification or pleasure within the sensory realm. And, in some cases, as long as it doesn't break precepts, it's not karmically harmful, necessarily harmful kind of a reaction, but that it takes control over our lives, and the best that it can do is provide a temporary sense of gratification. It's not something that we can depend on as a long-term answer to our need, our wish for stability and peace. It's temporary at best. So the Buddha talks about obstruction to clear seeing as an obstruction to true freedom in a more stable sense. It's not a true refuge or a good refuge. So we look at that hindrance of sense desire as one that's limiting to us. And do we really want to be under its control? The second hindrance of vyapada, ill will, kind of on the opposite scale. Instead of the mind moving towards something to grasp it and bring it in, it's having an experience of the mind wanting to move away, get rid of, not have to experience something that's repulsive or unpleasant or difficult, not wanting to have to be with that which is unpleasant, challenging, and we often respond with irritation or sometimes outright anger, but all falling in that category of aversion, wanting to be rid of, to annihilate, to not have to be in association with this particular perception or experience. So, we have all sorts of ways of dealing with that. We've got our own stories and the justifications and how reacted this way, and maybe we have this sense that if we can just annihilate it or get rid of it or get rid of the being who's responsible for all of my suffering in the world, or not have to associate that somehow that will relieve us of the suffering involved with that. But yet the more we react to that and base our speech and base our actions on that negativity of mind, that wish to get rid of, the more we actually tie ourselves to it, because we're increasing our affiliation, even through aversion, trying to get rid of. It's creating that kind of karmic connection with that mind state and with those experiences, so that we don't end the connection with it. We just reinforce it. Temporarily, we can get rid of it, push it away through negativity and aversion, feel maybe a little bit better when we let somebody know how we feel in that way. But it's all very temporary and just reinforces the whole mind habit. So those are kind of like two really strong hindrances. The other ones that are more delusion-based are subtler, but and maybe not quite so impactful, but still lead to this agitation and fogginess of mind and this wavering of mind that doesn't settle. The third hindrance, dinamita, dullness and drowsiness, refer. Yeah, the simile for that is like the mind or the water, the dish of water. Oh, I forgot the second one. The second one is like boiling water. So the first being the die, the second hindrance of anger or will being like boiling water. Probably relate to that that sense of just physically real intense moments. You can really actually feel that heat element rise in the body and in the mind. So it's a hot, uncomfortable state of mind, boiling water. And the third one of dullness and drowsiness being like algae covering a body of water. It's just like this kind of heavy coating sitting on top of your kind of keeping any kind of freshness or alertness from being able to manifest. So there's this kind of heavy lid sitting on top of the mind, like algae on top of a body of water. It's kind of two aspects, dullness, drowsiness. The first one being sort of a more, the subtle mental state, subtle, I think in the Tibetan tradition, sometimes it's called subtle laxity. So that it may not be all in all, out and out, conking out, falling asleep, but it's that kind of lack of clarity, that kind of just below the surface of alertness, even though you may not be completely collapsing. It's that kind of sense of just not completely there. And then the drowsiness is more of that continuation where it really starts to fall into the nodding, how to nod as a monk. You're moving into the metta part of Tina Metta. So dullness and drowsiness. Slightly dullness and drowsiness when experience is somewhat unpleasant. It's a good way to check out just by allowing ourselves to drift and not be alert to what's going on if it's unpleasant. So in having how to differentiate that kind of state of mind, differentiating the mental state of laxity and laziness with actual physical exhaustion sometimes is a bit of a tricky area. The fourth hindrance of restlessness and anxiety, restlessness and worry. I think in the Digha Nikaya, Morris Walsh translates it as worry and flurry. Udacha kukucha is likened to a body moving across it and causing ripples and agitation in the surface of the water. So you can kind of get that feeling of unsettledness, of movement, of agitation with the wind blowing over the mind. States like anxiety, fear, those would be falling under that category of restlessness, anxiety. And then the final hindrance of vicikiccha, skeptical doubt. That mind, particularly in regard to the teachings, I mean, there are some things that we have doubt about just in normal daily life because we just literally don't know the answer to that, and so we're not sure of a particular thing that we need to do. But more in reference to that kind of destabilizing state of mind that isn't sure really about the path or the usefulness of the teachings, which tradition to go with, is it really useful? All those kinds of get frustrated with or lost in. This is what's called the skeptical doubt. And just, you know, if it's a very strong hindrance, it can paralyze us in our practice. And we just end up getting frustrated and losing the plot. So these are the basic categories. And that the simile for that one is water that has silt or mud all stirred up in it, so it's very cloudy, and also put in a dark room. So you got the hindrance coloring the mind itself, and then you're in it's like being closed up in a dark room. You know, just lost, lost. So they're pretty graphic similes, and I think they're very useful descriptions of what you. And to remember that these are, you know, as we're exploring them and going through them and reflecting in ourselves, what's that like? These are things to really experience or to understand on an affective level, a feeling tone level. It's not just thoughts to think about or conceptualize or bring, you know, into the realm of the intellect, but to use these to really go to a deeper layer of mind. You know, what's the energetic? These are energetic qualities that obstruct our clear seeing, and to work with them in that way. It goes beyond just thinking about them. It moves into really knowing them and really experiencing them, and then adjusting our attention in ways that help to relieve them or get to experience some of the antidotes, opposite qualities in relation to those mind states. So to be brought in for exploration, investigation on a deep energetic level. So those are the kind of descriptions of what it's like when these hindrances are present in the mind. There's also a set of similes that the Buddha uses when to kind of describe what it's like to be free of them in some ways, which also points back to, you know, what it's like when you're not free of them. But it's the suttas itself are phrased in a way that it's what's free from sensual desire. And it's like having been in debt, but no longer being in debt, having paid off your debt when you're free from sensual desire. And I like to think of that as, you know, if we live our lives trying to find gratification in the realm of the senses, then we are, in a sense, putting ourselves in debt to that object of sensual desire. We're dependent on it. We've borrowed it, in a sense, for that sense of pleasure, temporary gratification. And because we've invested in it and used it as the basis for our happiness, then we've gone into debt with it because it's got us. You know, it's if we buy into it, then it's got its hooks and its tentacles into us, and for us to get that same sense of enjoyment, pleasure out of life, we have to invest in that object again. So it's like being in debt. And if we can free ourselves from that control that it has over us, and not be in debt with it, then there's a real sense of freedom. Just as if you've had a loan for 30 years and you finally make the last payment. It's like, this isn't controlling me anymore. I'm a free being. I've paid off my debts. So there's that sense of relief, that we don't have to be yanked around by sensual desire for our sense of well-being. The simile regarding the second hindrance of ill will, aversion, is like it's they liken that state of mind to having an illness or a dis-ease, and when one is relieved of that hindrance of ill will and aversion, it's like becoming healthy again and being free from illness, free from disease. So you've recovered from this boiling agitation, very unpleasant state of mind, and that feverish state of mind, if you will, the heat that's rising up in the moments of anger. It is like a fever. And if we can free ourselves from that state of mind, it's like the fever finally breaking and settling down into coolness, normality again. And that agitation that goes along with that fevered, anger boiling state of mind starts to settle down to room temp. So there's a real sense of relief in that freedom. Then there's the hindrance of dullness and drowsiness, and that simile is around like being imprisoned, like the algae sitting on top of the water, kind of suffocating our minds. It's being in prison is being in a closed up room, a container, maybe no windows, no ability to see outside of it, and you're just in this tight little room that has no space, has no freshness, has no air circulating through it. So it's like being in prison, and the freedom from when you're released. You can imagine what it's like after, if you were in prison for 30 years and you were finally given parole and you walk out into the fresh open air, and all of a sudden, there's a world outside of this very small container of mind, so that one isn't just checking out in this very closed state of mind. There's openness and freshness there. So being freed from prison, released from prison. And that fourth hindrance, agitation, restlessness, being essentially freed from slavery is the simile. So that kind of agitated, anxious, fearful, restless state of mind is like being controlled, as if one is a slave to those mind states. The thoughts keep bubbling up, the proliferation keeps going, the anxiety or the fear feeds that, and the proliferation is getting kind of endless positive feedback cycle of thoughts and emotions and bodily experiences that kind of compounds and grows until we become essentially a hapless victim of that mind state. It's like being enslaved by a controlling. And to be freed from that, to be released from that, is an incredible relief. And then the last hindrance of um, skeptical doubt is reckoned to being like having made it uh, safely across a desert crossing. So you're in a desert, the wilderness of the desert. You're not sure where the road is leading. You're not sure if it's leading anywhere. You don't have any reference point. You don't have anything to kind of anchor um, your attention to, and you're not sure if you're going to make it to the end, and where it's going, why, what's this all about. But then finding the road that's a sure, and making yourself across the desert until you're either at the oasis or on the other side of the desert. It's like that sense of relief. I found my way. So freedom from that being lost, establishment of a security. So those are the two major forms of similes that the Buddha references in talking about the hindrances. And the instructions um, in the Satipatthana regarding the hindrances is to basically know, when you're contemplating the hindrances as a meditation theme, to know if they're present or to know if they're absent, to know what causes them to arise, what are the precursors to them arising, um, and how one can let them pass, and then how to prevent them from arising in the future. Those are the contemplations that one can engage with uh, when reflecting on the five hindrances. And if you'll remember the fourth Satipatthana on Dhammas, reflection on Dhammas, the five hindrances is the first set of Dhammas to be reflected on in that fourth Satipatthana. So basically getting to know their presence or their absence is the starting point. So let's take a bit of time to do some meditation and maybe to do a little bit of exploration with this and see where you go with it. I'll just start out with a little guidance and then let you move into your own exploration with the five hindrances. So starting with getting settled in a comfortable meditation posture. So just to take a few minutes to get grounded in the body experience again, because our exploration of the hindrances is going to really involve being in touch with the energy of the body. So let's, as much as we might be, in the conceptual realm now from hearing the discussion here, to settle back down into the energies of the body. If you were here yesterday, we talked about first focusing simply on that experience of the affective experience of grounding in the earth element, tuning into solidity, the presence of tissues and bones and this physical body, remembering that we have a physical body here, feeling that kind of earth element. Feeling the density of contact with the meditation cushion or mat or chair. the solid elements of the feet and the legs, abdomen, sit bones. Back and chest. Arms, shoulders, bones and flesh. And neck and head. All the muscles of the face. Open, relax if you can let go of the tension that we hold in our face and in our shoulders. Just be aware of that and allow it to settle. And at the same time, as it starts to open and settle, relax just a little bit, that sense of spaciousness can start to emerge. The areas of space in the body, the nasal passages, the mouth, the chest, the breathing, the lungs, the throat, those open areas. You can feel both that grounding and that spaciousness. A whole body awareness from the soles of the feet to the tip of the head and everything in between. Let's get this sense of this entire body, both groundedness and spaciousness. And within that context of the whole body, ground, space, you might start to notice the gentle rhythm of breathing. There's the in and out breath, but there's also that very gentle expansion and contraction of the energy as it moves through the body as a whole. The breath energy, rhythmically expanding, contracting, expanding, contracting, in a very gentle, easing, soothing way. Ground, space, and rhythm, those three qualities. So take a few moments now to survey the quality of the heart, the mind. What might be there that's obstructing an experience of peacefulness, of settledness, of calm and clarity? Is there a sense of distraction or wanting, looking for some sort of gratification in a fantasy of what might be pleasurable, looking forward to the meal, food, what am I going to do after today's over, for something interesting, kind of that sensual, wanting some sort of pleasant sensual experience. See if that's present. Right now, just notice, is it present, is it absent? If it's there, what's it like? What does it feel like in the body? And the same for aversion, ill will, some memory bubbling up from a difficult interaction, some grievance that's hovering in the background. Is it there? Is that state of mind present, even subtly? Or if it is, what's it like? If it's not, then just notice that, the absence of that. Dullness, drowsiness. Is there still working off the late night? Not completely here yet. Heaviness. Wanting to rest in that checking out kind of state of mind. Or is the mind more awake and alert? Just noticing presence or absence. Noticing the presence or absence of restlessness and agitation, random thoughts, random ideas popping up. A lot of discursive thinking. One thing to another. Energetic nervousness, anxiety. What's that like in the body? Or noticing if it's not present. Wavering, questioning. Should I be doing something else than sitting here doing this? What's the point? I'm a hopeless case anyway. Not sure if this is the right path. Confusion. Doubt. Is it there? What's it like if it is? How do I know that in the body? Or if it's not, just noticing that as well. So one of these, if the mind is very, very still and very clear, you may not be experiencing much in the way of the hindrances. But if there's not that clarity and stillness and alertness, then one or more of those hindrances might be present. And so just for now, to notice on a deep level, energetic level, bodily level, which of those hindrances may be present. Or maybe there's several present. Maybe they're all present. Sometimes called the multiple hindrance attack. But not to move into judgment around it. And just to allow yourself to experience them and see how they affect that inherently clear state of stillness of the mind, that still body of water, what ripples or movements or colorations or obstructions are in the heart and mind. Just to know them for what they are. So the mind settles, just allow it to settle into the ground space and rhythm. So as with yesterday, this afternoon we'll have some questions and answers. If you'd like to write them down, put them in the basket in the back, then we'll have those for later on this afternoon. And in the next 15 minutes, well, I guess my impression is there's some people going down to prepare. But yeah, if anybody right now has question or reflection or clarification along this theme or others, please feel free to ask away. Got about 15 minutes. Jessica?
I believe that you translated sensual desires to come at Chanda. And I have this positive impression of Chanda, like it's a
healthy desire.
A healthy desire. Yeah. So can you talk about how it's also a hindrance?
Yeah, I can. 2 words. I'm sorry. Oh, the question was the Pali word for sensual desire being kama chanda, and Jessica's impression of the word chanda being in relation to a wholesome form of desire, but obviously sensual desire, kama chanda, not being considered a skillful, wholesome state of mind. So what gives? Two words in the Pali that are often translated as desire, chanda and tanha. Tanha, often also translated as craving, like as in the second noble truth, the cause of suffering, kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha, craving. Always an unwholesome state of mind, tanha is. Chanda can go either way. It's broader, a broader form, desire being another translation, interest being possibly another translation. So chanda, which is this desire or the zeal for Dhamma, or you can have kama chanda, which is sensual desire. So it works on both angles. Generally speaking, in the teachings, it's more of a positive quality, like the 4 bases of success, chanda, virya, citta, vimamsa, chanda being an inspiration or an interest, wanting to direct one's attention in a wholesome way. But the kama chanda is like an example of it being an unwholesome, akusala state. So it can be either one, depending on the context. Yeah. Okay, yourself there.
Yeah, there are 2 things that I find helpful. That, first of all, and you tell me if this is correctly stated, that the hindrances are what we do them, and they're based on past karma.
So
is that correct?
It's not so much that we do them, but we experience them. They are the result of, putting our attention onto objects of mind in a certain way that leads to their arising and reinforcement. So if we, just as an example, if we put our attention on something that's sensually beautiful or alluring, if we put our attention onto it, then that underlying tendency towards sense desire starts to arise and is activated. So it's a result of our action. If we put more attention onto it with that basis of sensual desire rising, then if we continue to put attention onto that object, then you are creating reinforcing karma action of mind. Once you generate that further interest and further putting one's attention onto it, then it's reacting to perception and increasing it, potentizing it.
And would it complicate matters to say that there's an element of volition?
There's any kind of movement of mind based on that kind of underlying tendency, when that impulse arises to do something, like get it or say something or some action, that whenever that impulse arises and it moves into action, there is volition. There's a quality of volition in operation.
Because just found it very helpful. I was having sloth and torpor sort of taking over.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned to myself, or I thought to myself, well, it's not going to be helpful to implement ill will. You know, so it was quite helpful to just be with the experience and notice it, and just maybe increase my breathing a little bit more, that sort of thing. So I found it helpful to have, you know, all of the hindrances in my mind, you know, freshly in my mind, to remind myself this is not helpful to you know, criticize myself for this experience.
Right. And what you're doing there is you're remembering through mindfulness that if you take a certain approach to it, like through criticism, that there will be a result that comes up from that. So you redirected your attention in a skillful way to a more wholesome way of holding the object, and had good results. So intention results, and to a more skillful kusala, wholesome state. Yeah.
A question about pain, the existence of pain and its overriding ability to distract one from overcoming the hindrances.
Physical pain.
Physical pain. And it exists, and fundamentally it exists in a way that revokes one's attempts to to overcome the hindrances. It becomes an enormous hindrance of itself. And so, any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, of course, some of it depends on the severity and the cause of the physical pain itself, whether you can actually do something about it on a very practical level or not. You know, there are, of course, sometimes when pain is very strong and overpowering in a sense, and if there's no, you know, practical way of relieving it through shifting your posture or medicine or whatever, then you're left with that very real experience of the fact that it can be quite powerful and distracting. But it's good to remember that even in the presence of strong physical pain, one doesn't necessarily have to add a second layer of suffering to it. There's the old phraseology that I really appreciate. You know, pain is inevitable. We've got a human body, and you know, it's just the way human bodies are. Some unfortunately have this whatever illness or condition that results in even more pain. So pain is inevitable in the human body to one extent or another, but suffering is optional. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So it's that mental reaction. It's that rising up of that impulse of, it shouldn't be this way, or it would be better if it weren't this way, or I wish it weren't this way. And that's truthful in some way. You know, it's acknowledging that that reaction is there, but then also having to take it that step further of, and this is what happens to human bodies sometimes. And in this situation right here, right now, I don't have any control over it. You know, what I do have control over is not allowing the mind to move into aversion. It may have to bear with the pain, you know, through patience, through expanding that mind that can hold it without getting wrapped up into wishing it weren't there. Because that's just adding a whole another layer. You've already got the pain. You know, you don't need to, you don't want to add that second layer of resistance and aversion to it. So you do have that control, but it's not easy, you know, because the habitual mind, you know, it wants to get rid of it, and it doesn't really know how other than to kind of try and fight it and push it away and annihilate it and get away from it and check out from it, whatever, you know. That's what we've learned, but it doesn't usually work, at least for long. Yeah, one more question. Shelley.
You mentioned the mind states, underlying mind states, from Margaret's question, kind of. So is that what a Ramana is? The underlying mind? There's something about the Ramana as a mind state. I guess there's varying understandings of it.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit for me?
Yeah. The underlying mind states that I'm referring to is more like anusaya, underlying tendencies. Greed, hatred, and delusion sort of being the three basic ones, and there's some other permutations and combinations from those. And those are the kind of basic, the basic tendencies that lead us into afflictive experience. That's the basis for our being here. Greed, hatred, and delusion. It's the root cause of suffering and the underlying reason why we've taken rebirth for so many eons. Over and over and over again, doing the same thing. So, underlying tendencies, they haven't been eradicated, uprooted. They haven't been uprooted. What was the other? I'm sorry, Aramana. Aramana, you know, I've heard it. It's the Thai being arom. Aramana, I think in some circles, and I don't know where it comes from, you know, and maybe some in the commentaries is kind of what you're referring to as kind of a base personality tendency or something like that. But really, I think that's kind of an extrapolation that isn't really sutta-based. I'm not sure where it comes from, to be honest. I haven't explored that much, but in the Pali, Ramana generally would mean something like mood, or the quality of a certain mind state, the affective quality. So that in that sense, you know, the hindrances are more based in that kind of affective mood or mind state. And that's how we get to know them and experience them in a way that we can then understand them and release them. Okay. Moods. You have to understand a mood on an energetic level. If you're just thinking about it, you're just lost in the realm of abstraction and conceptualization. If you go into the body, you go into the energetic experience, then you can understand the aramana, the mood, the mind state, the affective, the word affective. Yeah. Don't think about it so much. Yes. Well, I'd have to see it to know exactly the context of how he's using it. Okay. Okay. Okay, so continuing the exploration of the five hindrances, a little bit more this afternoon. There's a set of teachings in the connected discourses, the Samyutta Nikaya, around grouping together the 7 factors of enlightenment and the 5 hindrances. Very nice sutta. If people are into checking that out, it's Samyutta Nikaya 46, number 51, sometimes titled as nutriment or nourishment. And it goes through the nourishment, what is considered nutriment or nourishment for the arising of the 5 hindrances and the 7 enlightenment factors as well, and what are the factors for denourishing, or in a sense starving the hindrances, and what you can also get involved with in starving attitudes that starve the 7 factors of enlightenment too. So it's about nourishment and denourishment, Pali ahara, nourishment or nutriment. And I thought that just to start out a little bit of information from the suttas regarding those aspects or characteristics or ways that we attend to our experience that are encouraging the 5 hindrances to arise, and then those same opposites that encourage the or the denourishment of the hindrances that help starve the hindrances. So ways that we attend to the world that either support or support the arising or support the passing away of the 5 hindrances. So, because my memory isn't as good as it used to, I kind of took a few notes just to help me along the way. But those factors that cause the hindrances to increase one by one would be, in terms of kamachanda, the hindrance of sense desire, sensual desire, that what the Buddha calls unwise attention, ayoniso manasikara. We talked about that some yesterday and today as well, I think. So unwise attention, putting attention on, he calls the signs of the beautiful. So those things that are attractive, alluring, evocative of wanting, that cause desire to arise, putting our attention onto them and really moving into them and buying into them is a factor that nourishes that hindrance of sense desire. So if you're already caught up in it and you move into it even more, then the sense desire increases, and then the attention goes out even further and deeper, and it's this positive feedback cycle. So you're feeding that hindrance with unwise attention to that particular aspect of it that is alluring, and kind of ignoring all the rest of the stuff that isn't so alluring. And, we have this ability to have selective attention, so that when sense desire is in charge, it's directing how we view something, like that image of looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. We see what we want to see, essentially, and we ignore the rest. So that's a nourishing factor for kamachanda. Similarly with Vyapada, the ill will or aversion, if there's something that is kind of repulsive or difficult or unpleasant, and we put our attention unwisely into that aspect of that particular experience, how terrible that person is for saying something that is disagreeable to me, brings up a sense of ill will. And if you really keep on rehashing that, as you know, over and over and over again, then you're just feeding that even more. So that's unwise attention to the sign of the repulsive. And that just nourishes that ill will. And if you're feeling a little bit tired or a little bit groggy, and you put your unwise attention into that actual feeling of lethargy or slight discontentment, or kind of even move into a little bit of the previous hindrance of aversion to it, then that actually feeds the physical nature of sloth and torpor or dullness and drowsiness. So by really honing into it and moving into it, as you were talking about earlier today, that just reinforces it. And if we can say, oh, not going to move into it, not going to allow my attention to sink into it and reinforce it and nourish it, but direct it to a more wholesome object, something that's more energizing and enlivening, then it won't nourish that hindrance. Unwise attention in terms of the fourth hindrance, the udacha kukucha, restlessness and worry, restlessness, agitation, would be that kind of unwise attention to kind of an unsettledness of mind, is the way that the suttas describe it. There's like this kind of imprecision or darting around that sometimes the mind can get into. And if you start to really move into that and get involved and lost in the proliferation and how that keeps one's clarity fuzzy, if you really start moving into that and allowing your attention to absorb into that, then the bodily sense of restlessness and agitation, the hindrance, the energetic experience, will come from that. And then they feed each other too. So you're nourishing that kind of agitated feeling by attending to, kind of the random nature of some kinds of thinkings by really moving into it. That's how I understand that. And then if we want to nourish and feed our doubt, then we can really do that with what I would call useless speculation, starting to really follow the content of that feeling of doubt, and really getting into this massive verbal questioning of your practice, the experience, the results or the lack of results, other traditions with their promises, and just that kind of useless speculation will just feed that process of doubt. Oftentimes you'll see that kind of hindrance expressed in some of the ways that the Buddha describes that kind of useless speculation about the nature of the world, the nature of the cosmos, the nature of self. Am I not? Was I in the past? What will I be in the future? Those kinds of things, that kind of speculation about metaphysical things that don't really actually have very satisfactory answers and are all based in a self-view of some sort. So if you want to feel more doubtful and increase that hindrance, then start engaging in that kind of useless speculation about the nature of existence and the nature of the cosmos. So to starve the hindrances or to denourish them, the Buddha says, okay, for kamachanda, for sense desire, instead of focusing and absorbing into the beautiful aspect of things, you can counter that by really looking at the unattractive nature of the sense world or of the sensory experience, the objects, not as a way to increase aversion, but as a way to just kind of break the veil of the illusion of the attraction. So instead of looking just selectively at that which is evocative of sensuality, of sensual desire, we look at the whole thing. And we see its unattractive parts in a way that kind of helps neutralize and settle down the energy of sense desire, so that we see the aspects of food or the human body or whatever it is that we're attracted to in its entirety, and we come to a sense of equanimity rather than of attraction and desire, tanha, craving for it. So it's a balance that we use this contemplation of the unattractiveness to help shift the balance towards the center of neutrality. And with similarly in the opposite way with ill will, the classic approach is to develop the perceptions of loving kindness as a counterbalance. And I think that, as I've practiced with that a lot over the years, that the practice of developing loving kindness in that boundless state of well-wishing for all beings is the go-to practice in general. But sometimes if you're caught right in the middle of the experience of ill will or aversion coming up, then it becomes a bit, it's not so genuine. It becomes a bit disingenuous to try and paste it over, or plaster over it with, oh, may they be well, may they be happy, when you're just like seething with rage. In some ways, it negates the experience. It's kind of part of the aversion to the aversion. See if I can get rid of the aversion by pasting, thoughts of loving kindness for all beings, especially to this person who is driving me crazy. And if you can do that through past experience and development of loving kindness, that's great. But if you're not quite there, like most of us probably aren't quite there yet, developing the quality of patience, khanti, I think is a more useful in the moment antidote. So that if you can, again, develop that sense, as Ajahn Sumedho defines khanti or patience, as peaceful coexistence with the unpleasant, just broadening your ability to hold that which is really hard to bear, but you try and expand that capacity to be with it, not to plaster it over with fake kindness, but not to move into it, not to buy it, to realize that it's an unpleasant, unhealthy, unuseful response, the ill will, the anger, and then to just see if you can hold that space with patience. So that helps to denourish the quality of vyapada, ill will. For tinamidas, dullness, drowsiness, attending to objects that increase energy, increase the arousal. We've talked about that yesterday, I think, to some extent, what different approaches to opening the mind, getting it out of its prison, in a sense, of dullness. Just even the practical ways of attending to space and openness, light, perception of light, splashing water on your face, pulling your earlobes, and changing posture just to get some energy moving in the body and in the mind, so that just to increase arousal, to counteract that, to denourish that dullness. And for the agitation and restlessness, a couple of different approaches. A very classic one being attending to the in and out breathing, because if the mind and the body are agitated, and you have some relative ease or experience with using the breathing, then that's a very settling kind of a process. That rhythm, that very gentle, repetitive rhythm of the whole body breathing in, breathing out, helps to soothe the agitated aspects of the bodily experience. Sometimes that's a bit hard to do, breathing, as we talked about, being a fairly subtle object. But it's one that really does help settle the body. Also, just attending to the thoughts, to perceptions of peacefulness, of stillness, even sometimes just using those words of peacefulness, or maybe recollecting some of the teachings, and maybe we'll do this in just a bit too, of the Buddha's description of the culmination of the path, Nibbana. What might that be like? What are some of the qualities used to describe that experience of vast and deep contentment and peace? So actually evoking those kinds of thoughts, using skillful thought, putting skillful attention onto those kind of means to help settle the mind and bring it into a more calm, peaceful state. And then for the last hindrance of skeptical doubt, rather than useless speculation, maybe some useful investigation, sometimes an active recollection of some of the teachings that are inspiring, some of the teachings that you have resonated with, even if you are feeling doubtful, some ways that the practice has resonated or has been useful. Also, recollecting the Buddha's description of what are wholesome and what are unwholesome mind states. So investigating that, in your head, using a wise thinking process. So, okay, well, what has the Buddha said is a unskillful mind state? These 5 hindrances, are they present? What has the Buddha said are skillful mind states? Do I have the capacity to maybe experience those? And if I do, what's the result? So kind of reviewing some of the teachings, along the lines of the paramis, the development of generosity, the development of Sila, the development of wisdom, of loving kindness, of patience, all of these qualities that the Buddha says these are wholesome mind states. Well, when I think about those, does it help to settle the mind? Does it help to pacify the mind? Does it make me feel more secure? And if you reflect on those and see the truth for those for yourself, then the doubt in the efficacy of the path will diminish. You'll be denourishing that kind of, is this really the right thing to be doing? Am I doing it right? So wise reflection, in a sense, wise attention to certain aspects of the teaching that are inspiring and validating is a good way to help dispel some of that. So this is nourishment of the hindrances, how to make them increase, and then the opposite, how to make them decrease as useful forms of contemplation. So if you have a tendency towards a particular hindrance, maybe to reflect on what it is, how you attend to it that might increase it, and how you can develop the opposite way of attending wisely to some reflection or some characteristic that helps to denourish that tendency over time. We're talking about over time, because these are entrenched habits that we've developed over a long period of time. So, but to really reflect on that and see where you're at with that, and see what might be of use, a useful way to put your attention. So just a few thoughts for future practice. And for right now, let's take a bit of time to do some meditation. And I'll start with just a bit of guidance on a reflection that I find very useful and have for a number of years and still use quite frequently in terms of the 5 hindrances. So again, find your meditation posture that's comfortable. Settle back into the body. Again, as we, yesterday and this morning, using those 3 reference points of settling back into the body and its solid nature, its earth nature, earth element, ground, and the spatial element of openness and the spaciousness that can be found within the bodily experience, and dwelling with those for a little while, and then tuning into the very gentle rhythmic quality of the breathing as a very calming, settling reflection. So ground, space, and rhythm. So just do that for a few minutes to see if you can establish a bodily presence. So with in this morning's guided meditation, I made reference to investigating the current mood of the mind, in a sense, by going through the list of the five hindrances in your mind, one by one, and noting whether they're present or whether they're absent. What's the overarching state of mind, the mood, on an energetic level. And if they are present, what they feel like. Just looking at them without a lot of judgment attached to it, just to notice what they're like, if they're there. And then just mentioning some of the ways that we can nourish those, ways that we can denourish them. Similarly, a good exercise that I find very useful is to consider, even if there are hindrances present and the mind isn't completely devoid of them, posing the question, what would it be like? What would it be like if that hindrance weren't there? What are the qualities that one might experience? What positive, energetic / emotional, positive emotional qualities might one feel? So thinking about the first hindrance of sensual desire, what would it be like not to be taken in by sensuality, by sensual desire? What would you feel like? Maybe find some words or a word or two that describe that feeling. Maybe something like contented, at ease, not stirred up. Contented is the word that keeps coming back to me. What would it feel like? Just to be content with whatever we've got right here, right now, not wanting. What would it feel like to be free from ill will or aversion, anger, resentment? Maybe a sense of warmth, open-hearted gentleness, gentle. Spacious. See if there's a word that fits for you that describes that freedom from ill will. And what does that feel like? What is the feeling in the body and the mind with warmth or gentle? What would it feel like to be free from drowsiness, free from dullness? Alert, fresh, cool, attentive and alive. Clear. What might it feel like to be free from the hindrance of restlessness and agitation? Still, serene, peaceful. Can you invoke that experience energetically just through the reflection on those words? What would it be? What would it feel like to be free from doubt? The energetic qualities of security, stable, unwavering, steady. So the Buddha talks about the five hindrances being in abeyance as the basis for samma samadhi, right composure, full composure of mind. And once those hindrances have settled, been eliminated, at least temporarily, the mind is open to that pure awareness, alertness, clarity. So back through those positive qualities, see if you can wrap them into one experience. All those qualities present, with the abandoning of the hindrances, wrapped into one energetic experience of contentment, of gentleness, warmth. Alertness, alert, fresh, present. Still. Secure, stable, unwavering. So freedom from these hindrances is the basis for moving deeper into an unwavering composure of mind, suitable for seeing things the way they are. So for the next period of meditation, this period of meditation, for another 20, 25 minutes or so maybe, to be attentive to, as a hindrance might start to arise, noticing its presence. How can you denourish it? Through maybe a positive reflection on what would it be like if that weren't here. Some of these images, words, to disentangle us from that hindrance and allow the collectedness of the mind to just be at one, at peace with the gentle in and out breathing, to allow, if it's going to happen, to allow the mind, the attention to sink into that as deeply as it wants to. Okay, we've got a few questions here. Some of them along the same line, similar, a couple of ones that are addressing the same question. First one here is, can you say more about increasing energy during meditation to help with sleepiness? Yeah, we've gone over a few of the teachings, both yesterday and today, around practical ways of dispelling the hindrance of dullness and drowsiness. One is just on a day like today, we've got this afternoon meditation session, not overdoing it. I was mentioning, the one hindrance can lead to another. So just some practical things, it's like moderation in eating, moderation in sleep. Those are teachings that the Buddha gives to particularly anybody, but particularly the monastic community. It's like an Ajahn Chah's advice along those lines of eat little, sleep little, talk little, all those kinds of to drowsiness when we sit down on the cushion, particularly in the afternoon period. So, we really can expend a lot of chi, a lot of mental energy by allowing our senses to go unrestrained, by allowing our attention to be pulled out into the world around us, by engaging unnecessarily in external stimulation, draws the energy, drains the energy, and leaves us with the tendency or the potential for more dullness and drowsiness whenever. So sense restraint is also a very useful practice, and it's learning not just restraint in terms of like isolating oneself or closing one's sense doors, but learning how to maintain that internal sense of stability, internal sense of not allowing the attention to flow out, the focus within this bodily experience, like all of yesterday's Daylong, around how to stay present, mindfulness immersed in the body, so that the attention stays here, and the experience of life as we move through it, whether it's on the cushion or out walking or engaging in daily activities, so that our point of reference is this present moment experience within the body, and that experience flows through us rather than us going out to the world around us. All of that is energy preserving and energy making. It's a way of being in the world that is conducive to alertness and energy. If we stop the outflow of attention from its home base, mindfulness of the body. There's a great bumper sticker that you can, that I've seen like on the freeway, in the car on the car in front of us or something like that in a traffic jam, and it's, if I spent more time in my body, I'd be home by now. So keeping that in, as a real way to preserve energy and increase alertness. Of course, if you're, again, say it over again, if it's happening in meditation, and it's kind of a frequent thing, then to do all the little things you can do in terms of not attending to the quality of sleepiness, not allowing the attention to move out into that experience, or generating a strong interest in investigating, and I've done this before with success, that it's like, okay, the dullness and the drowsiness is there. What's that like? You know, maybe there's this kind of sense of fogginess or density in the head, that kind of, you know, a head filled with cement kind of a thing. What does that feel like? Really, really say, okay, I'm going to investigate this. Where can I feel? What does it feel like? You know, what's the quality? How thick is it? You know, does it encompass the whole center of the head? Does it move into the body anywhere else? Is there slumping in the posture? So say, really, really say, okay, I really want to know what dullness and drowsiness is all about. I want to investigate it as best I can and to know all its nuances. And if you take that kind of interest in it, then it's its own antidote. Your investigation, your interest in it, rather than just kind of moving into the energy, the dullness itself. You not only understand what it is more, but you also, that interest itself helps to dispel the energy, the fatigue, the dull energy. Or, you know, the practical things of change of posture. We've got this program that meditation is sitting meditation, the sitting posture. And it's a good posture. It leads to a lot of good things, but if you think that's all meditation is, then, you know, you're missing a whole lot of opportunity. A lot of the practitioners, Thai forest meditation masters, most of them actually in the Thai forest tradition put a strong emphasis on walking meditation, hours of walking meditation a day, particularly, you know, in the afternoons, when dullness, drowsiness tends to come on. There are some, even a few meditation masters who pretty much that was all they do. They don't really have much of a sitting meditation practice, and they're able to, you know, realize all the fruits of the practice in the walking posture. So walking meditation, find yourself a relatively quiet place, make your own meditation path in your backyard if you've got one, devote your 20 to 30 paces, and you've got a good climate here for doing that. It's not so hot most of the time. Just allow yourself to walk back and forth as long as you're able to, and really give the mind a chance to sink into that gentle, repetitive movement and become very present. And there's a lot of alertness. The Buddha says that the concentration or the collectedness that develops during walking meditation is long-lasting. So consider changes of posture to help increase that energy. Regarding virya, energy, as an enlightenment factor, is this felt as alertness, or is there also a quality of the energy that is felt, a quality of the energy that felt, a feeling to the kind of energy, maybe even its texture or its pleasantness? Yes, all of the above, really. I mean, it is you know, the word virya is often strongly associated with another word, vayama, effort. So effort and energy are very, very closely related to each other. And samma vayama, right effort, is one of the factors of the Eightfold Path. So it's an energy or it's an alertness. The virya refers more to that kind of alert quality of mind, but it's centered around also the investigation of the wholesomeness or unwholesomeness of the mind states that are present, and an energetic effort to increase wholesome mind states and decrease unwholesome mind states. So they kind of go hand in hand, particularly as an enlightenment factor of the 7 factors of enlightenment. Also as one of the 5 indriyas, the 5 what's the English word for Indriya? Faculties, right? Five spiritual faculties. As an energetic quality, yes, it's felt as alertness, and inherent in that alert, energetic state that's knowing the presence or absence of wholesome and unwholesome factors. There's a certain amount of interest and joy, and it's a very pleasant state of mind. I would say it's definitely the quality of a sukha vedana, a very pleasant feeling tone to it. So it's very reinforcing. If it moves to the point of super energized agitation, then it's moving into the other hindrances of restlessness and agitation, and it's like kind of overcharged kind of an energy. So you're not looking for that kind of agitated energy in the practice, but a very clear, stable alertness, freshness that's there, which is a basis for clear seeing, for seeing our experience in its true nature. So yeah, it's a real nice kind of a feeling if it's not overcharged. How important is it to accurately identify the energy in the body as ill will, desire, doubt, etc.? I think it is actually significant and important, because if you've misidentified something, then you might apply the wrong antidote. So if you somehow think that your sensual desire is actually ill will, then you might start to develop an unhealthy interest in that essential object, thinking that you're developing kindness or acceptance of it, or vice versa. If you think your ill will is sensuality, then you start developing in a Subha practice, then you may increase the negativity. So it's sort of, you have to really know what it is that you're dealing with to provide the accurate counter reflection to it. So that's the whole purpose of really investigating what's present, knowing what the qualities of them are, and not just an opinion about them, but the actual bodily experience. I think this is, I now suspect I'm avoiding the harder work of understanding the origins of my hindrances. Thoughts? Recommendations? I think my understanding of that instruction to investigate when you've identified the presence of a certain hindrance, and to know know it in its arising or its origination, is not so much a conceptual analysis of understanding, but more of an investigative analysis of the experience, so that you kind of trace back the energetic qualities that are arising, and where the attention has been focused to allow the nourishment or the arising of that hindrance. What is it that is arising in the mind? Where am I turning my attention to? What perception or thought or memory, external stimulation? Where's my attention going in relation to this particular hindrance? So it's paying attention to a step back, or a level deeper, as to what precedes and what is encouraging the prior step to the arising of the particular mood or the mind state. So you don't have to necessarily be discursive, but you have to be very present in the body to catch that as it's happening. The more you practice with mindfulness, clear comprehension, steadying the mind, soothing the mind, being with the body, the quicker it is that you'll see these states of mind start to arise, and the quicker it is that you'll catch yourself from getting overly involved through unwise attention and nourishing and increasing them. You start to see these patterns. It's not that you necessarily are able to eradicate them immediately, but you catch them sooner. And the sooner you catch them, the less you reinforce them, and the more quickly you'll allow them to pass. So yeah, just keeping up with the practice of mindfulness of the body, being, using the whole focus of the sitting practice to also carry that over into the waking moments of daily activity, so that you can really see when these unwholesome states of mind are starting to arise and catch them quickly. When walking around lovely neighborhoods, I catch my mind desiring all of the comfortable lifestyles I see. This comparison/jealousy makes me miserable. Any advice on how to deal with this misery-making factory of the mind? Sense restraint? It's again, it's that kind of factor of unwise attention. If you know something is going to increase an unskillful quality of mind, then you stop doing it. Stop walking around neighborhoods looking and allowing yourself to move into envy and the comparing mind, because it does make you miserable. It makes it, so it's like Ajahn Chah saying, it's like 90% of the practice is doing the same thing over and over again until you get tired of doing it, making the same mistake over and over again until you just wear out. It's like, okay, I don't need to keep doing this. So restraining through, not restraining the unwise attention, and walk through another neighborhood where the people aren't so fortunate, and you realize that maybe the place you're living is more comfortable or more secure than what a lot of people are living in. So attend to the other end of things, and reflect with gratitude of what you do have, because there are a whole lot of people who are a whole lot worse off. So that's a balance to that kind of comparing, envy kind of a mind, and then instead of feeling miserable, you end up feeling gratitude for what you do have. Okay, so that's it for the written questions. We can have I was going to say we'll have a period of another period of meditation, unless there are some other questions. Shelley's always good for another question. Now.
So what was really interesting was last time, my meditation, with the hindrances, because I kind of went down the list, and it turned out the hindrance of greed and the hindrance of aversion didn't come up, that wasn't existing in the meditation. But of course I remembered how I ate my lunch, and I realized, yeah, there was greed right there, and I'm suffering because of it right now. So that was cool to see that, but the other ones didn't seem to, they seem to apply. What were the other ones? The other three?
Sloth, torpor,
yeah,
restlessness, doubt.
Yeah, the doubt. The doubt, actually, that was Ajahn Sona says, doubt, he brings up a doubt that you can become enlightened. But that's a major doubt. And I think I've gotten rid of that one. I just like, there's no point. There's no point in doubting that. And what was the other one?
Agitation, restlessness, sloth, torpor, udacha kukucha, yeah, restlessness.
Agitation, yeah. So that one can come up. Because you're like, okay, when's it gonna end? When's it gonna end? You know, it's just like, it's weird. It's like 1 minute I'm just, think I'm in samadhi, feels like I'm in samadhi, and when's this gonna end? When is this gonna end? So it was actually really quite interesting, so I appreciate you using the whole framework. And you know, so there's the on the cushion stuff, and then there's the off the cushion stuff. And so I'm really looking forward to being more conscious of the off the cushion stuff. And of course, the aversion and the greed are probably biggies.
They're the most strong ones. Yeah, they're the ones that we tend to be able to see more easily. Yeah, because they involve, both of those involve very strong states of mind that are actively pulling us out or trying to push away. The other three that are more delusion-based, you know, I think that's what delusion is difficulty seeing them arise. Yeah.
Sona says it's the aversion, the anger is the biggie.
It's the one that can create the most harm. It's the most karmically consequential to you if you act on that aversion. It can have some pretty devastating effects. But because it's so painful to experience, it's also, say, in some ways, quote unquote, easier to deal with than, say, sensual desire. Because sensual desire has a more pleasant experience to it, or there's a more pleasant outcome, even if it's very temporary. It's more, it is a little bit more alluring, and you know, it's harder to see. You don't feel so averse to it. But the pain of anger, the pain of irritation, is something that you have a motivation to work with, to deal with, to eliminate.
I used to think that, but especially after reading Ajahn Sona's, his new book. Everybody should read it. There's copies downstairs. But after I read that, I started, everywhere I go, people are cranking about stuff. Even at lunchtime, my good friend here in Iowa, there's this crankiness came up about, you know, corporate America. And it's almost as a cultural thing. And I mean, that kind of crankiness, I call that aversion. It's not exactly anger, but it's this aversion to the weather, aversion to the traffic, you know, and it's like, now I'm having aversion to the aversion. But seeing it, I think it must be a cultural norm.
Yeah, and you know, there's a certain energy that one gets from engaging in anger that's enlivening, and you know, for some people it's better than dullness, or you know, sort of like, okay, what can I do that's interesting? Well, I can get angry about something. Righteous indignation is, you know.
You know, that was kind of my big point.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sitting there getting angry about something on the cushion. So, but why is that? So the hindrances are.
Yeah, they're on or off the cushion. They're not confined to the cushion.
I thought it was all the meditation bucket they were thrown into.
No. I mean, that's where we start to experience them more clearly because our distractions are less. But they're operating most of the time in one way or another. Yeah.
When speaking about the hindrances, I've heard let them pass, release them, and uproot them. And I'm wondering if that's all the same actions. And then when I think about uprooting, it seems like much more like sort of maybe a little harsher and a little bit more engaging in the sense of maybe entanglement. with them, and so I'm just wondering about that language and.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain different qualities, you know, certainly being a completely passive observer to unskillful mind states, it isn't the be all and the end all. I mean, we have to know an unskillful mind state, and we have to understand it, and to see the suffering that it causes. We have to fully understand that first noble truth. You know, oh, this is suffering, and we have to allow it in. But you know, the natural tendency of the unenlightened mind is to either, you know, is to react to it or to move into it in some way. You know, if it's a unskillful state of mind that's involving sensuality, you know, the idea is if I get it, then I'll be happy. So we can't just passively see it arise and allow our attention and our mind or activities of body, mind, speech, or mind move into it. Or aversion is the same way. You know, we don't want to just passively, you know, hopefully it'll rise and pass away. You know, maybe it will. If it's not there, it's strong. But if our minds are immersed in it, after we recognize its presence, then we need to develop a strategy. That's what right effort is all about. If it's an unskillful state of mind, we want to abandon it. We need to know how to abandon it through a counter antidote. You know, putting our attention on something that's its opposite or it's more wholesome. Not allowing ourselves to move into the conceptualization process. You know, even sometimes firmly cutting that off, cutting that discursive reactivity towards getting into the story, you know, getting into the memory and manufacturing temporary forms of gratification by, you know, telling somebody off or, you know, just ranting in our own heads about it. That's all unwise attention. And so we can't just passively let that keep going and going and going and letting the defilements run the show. We want to unseat them and replace them with skillful qualities of mind, so that we let mindfulness, clear comprehension, wisdom, the teachings on cause and effect, what we do makes a difference. We want that to become the generator of our experience, rather than letting desire, delusion, anger control our lives. So that takes some active work. Yeah, that just doesn't happen by passively sitting there and being quote unquote mindful. Yeah, there is that quality of knowing what is skillful, what is unskillful, and encouraging the skillful and discouraging the unskillful. It's an active process. Yeah.
I've had this question in various ways over the years, but I've been thinking about, I notice in myself and others too, that sometimes aversion is the energy that helps to know where a boundary is. And I notice that, but I don't see that. Like if I see you on the floor setting a boundary, there isn't aversion there. But I'm curious to know, like sometimes it seems like without that energy that then there can be sort of like a collapse into maybe allowing, I don't know, maybe it's going into another hindrance like greed, like trying to be like too much of a peacemaker with something. And so I'm curious about that, working with aversion in that way, of how to know that something maybe you can't allow for something. Like I was rereading the story of the Buddha's cousin trying to kill him, and that the Buddha didn't allow his cousin back into the Sangha at the end of his cousin's He didn't hit a boundary, he didn't say, oh, sure, come back now that you are sort of seeing this clearly. He didn't do that, and so, like, in that case, like, how is it sort of saying, no, you can't come back in, but there's not also, there's still kindness there, there's still compassion there, but there is clarity that there's still a boundary.
Yeah, no, precisely that. It's like, you know, there can be firmness and clarity around the unskillfulness or the unwholesomeness of a certain mind state of like somebody else's, you know, unskillful action, and the fact that they may be causing harm. And there can be that skill and that ability to set a boundary and say, oh no, that's, you can't do that. You know, I won't allow that. I won't be in the presence of that. But coming from wisdom, like this is not skillful. This is not helpful to yourself or to other people. So no, I'm not going to abide with that. But that can be done from a completely non-aversive state of mind. You're just, you know, with wisdom and clarity, discernment about the nature of what is unskillful, what is harmful in the world, without taking a personal reactive aversion to the fact that it's happening. You realize that people are acting, they're doing something in a certain way because they are under the influence of the defiled state of mind. They're in their very unskillful way of acting. They're trying to find some sort of security or peace, or avoiding some sort of feeling of threat, maybe operating from a fearful state, whatever it is. There's the understanding that that's the case, but that doesn't mean that you then, quote unquote, out of compassion, allow them to keep doing it, you know, because you want to have a sense of kindness or patience, or, you know, those are kind of picking up those qualities in the wrong way. That's picking them up without wisdom, without clarity that actions have consequences, and that unskillful actions have unskillful consequences, both for the perpetrator and the victim, in a sense. And so that's when if you're seeing that clearly, if you see what's happening clearly, and the suffering that other being is experiencing and unskillfully trying to address, then with complete clarity and non-aversiveness, through that wisdom of your own, then you can set a boundary and just say, no, not acceptable, can't do. And here's the reason why. Whether the person understands it or not is, you know, it's inconsequential to your own mind state.
So like in the case of the Buddha, if I'm hearing correctly, he didn't, so like when his cousin was sort of saying the things he said about, I remember the 5 different training rules that he should be taken up. But the Buddha, part of it is he didn't go into like a hindrance of doubting that he was incorrect, because of course he had complete clarity. So that's not taking it personally.
Yeah.
But the criticism is there, but sort of compassion for his delusion, but not sort of second guessing.
Yeah, and the effects that, you know, that can have not only for Devadatta himself, but for, you know, the people that he's drawing in, you know, and moving into his schismatic camp, you know. I mean, it's how many times in the suttas have you seen the Buddha say with complete sternness, misguided man, how can you do whatever it is that you've been doing? You know, getting a blast from the Buddha is probably, you know, not like getting a blast from anything else, you know. It's like, wow, you know, but because it is filled with that absolute clarity of wisdom, and so that, but, and you know, Ajahn Pasano recounts numerous stories of, say, somebody like Ajahn Chah, who could be completely relaxed and internally at peace without the aversion or difficulty while he's, reprimanding or admonishing another monk, for some sort of unskillful, unwise behavior. So there can be fierceness without anger, aversion. And it's done for the benefit of those people. Yeah.
To be able to use those same clear, wise boundaries within when I am assailed by restlessness and worry. It seems to be part of my karmic experience. That's probably the one that where there's a fair amount of suffering. And there's a strong sense of helplessness that can arise, from when you're caught in that cycle. Can you offer, I mean, you have been, but once again, can you offer?
I say what I've said in a slightly different way.
Especially when it's a tough one.
No, actually, what it brought to mind was a useful clarification on, because sometimes people ask this question. It's like, oh, okay, well, I hear that, when certain aspects of mind or mind states arise, the most important thing is to be mindful of them, to allow them, not to get averse to them, not to push them away, but to allow them to be there and mindfully, be aware of them. That's the most important thing. And then you hear other people say, you need to eradicate these mind states. You need to, not attend to them, not believe them, not go into them, and just, not pay attention to them. So you hear both camps, and it's sort of like, okay, well, what gives here? What's the right approach? And my way of understanding it, which I don't know is true of everyone's, but my way of understanding it is that both are true in terms of when you have a perceptual pattern that is repeating itself, or you're feeling the results of something, like of an unpleasant memory arises, or an unpleasant experience comes, across your plate, then the duty at that point is to allow that presence to be felt. You're not pushing it away. You're not trying to repress a certain memory or a certain result, something that's a result of past conditioning as it arises into the mind. You want to not get lost in immediate aversion to that perception, that pattern. You need to understand that and try and hold it carefully. And as soon as any reactivity that is moving into an intentional state of response, like a reaction to, particularly if it's like activity of speech or body, but even in the mental process, when the thought formation starts to arise, the engagement with that pattern starts to trigger a response that results in like mental proliferation, sort of like, that really shouldn't have happened. That person shouldn't have said that. Or I don't want, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or you start planning the scenario of what it is that you're going to do. That's the appropriate point to say, no, don't go there. Don't allow that. It's in the Pali words or in the Buddhist psychology, that's when the sankhara, the intentional movement of mind, is starting to arise in reaction to the sanya or perception. So there's that transition point where perception and feeling start to, the defilement gets a hold of it and starts to generate a new sankhara, a new formation based on greed, hatred, or delusion. And that's where you can stop it and say, and if you have that strength of mind, that's setting that boundary internally, You can just say, oh, no, don't go there. I don't have to go there. Yeah, I can stop that proliferative process, that papancha. I can stop that right here at the thought, at the initial thought as it starts to arise. Never mind. And the way to do that is through this mindfulness of the body, because then you can start to feel that surge of volition starting to arise. Intention that is the basis for further action, particularly in this case, unskillful action in the mind. It's an energetic quality, and it's that kind of welling up of wanting to do something about this experience, this memory, this perception, this feeling. It's that wanting to do something about it as it's starting to arise, where you can catch it and say, don't want to go there. So both apply, I think.
Hi. That was really helpful. I was curious if we're in that moment and we don't quite catch it, and it kind of creates... It explodes. Once we are able to catch it or unplug from the whole cycle of it, any advice on how to respond? Then, especially if we're in meditation and we catch it, run with it, and then we realize it, maybe how to come back. Do we go back into holding?
Just go back into the bodily experience. Oh, okay, well, it got this far, I've caught it. How does it feel? Where's the tension in the body? Where's the rising of energy in the body? Expand your attention from that one particular spot, if you can identify a spot, to the whole body. Feel the whole body breathing, and allow that energy to kind of, that mental energy to be absorbed into the rhythm of the breathing. It's like yesterday when I think I was remembering that analogy of Ajahn Sucitto's, is the little rivers of the mental energy that are kind of coursing through. Allow them to drain into the big river of the kaya sankhara, the bodily formation, the in and out breathing, and allow that energetic quality of breathing, the very gentle rhythm, absorb, collect, and drain off that mental energy. So just full body awareness, full body breathing, allow the mental hindrance, that experience, the energetic experience, to just drain into that, and allow it to drain off. Very useful tool.